Did you play the Oregon Trail, trying to keep your little band of pioneers alive as they travel across the rough and treacherous terrain, killing bison, encountering difficulties, and dying of starvation, or maybe dysentery? Well, the main characters in this book played the game and decided they wanted to make a video game world like this one. In this episode, we're breaking down the book Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriella Zevin. We will discuss the plot, talk about characters, and lastly, we will delve into the themes of the novel. So let's dive in. The plot of this book was very straightforward. This is a coming-of-age novel, and it follows the basic structure of that trope. Two young people grow up and become adults. Most coming-of-age novels cover pivotal moments of young adult becoming adults. For example, a young woman getting her period or a young man going through puberty. However, what is interesting about this coming-of-age novel is that it doesn't discuss much about the young adult years and focuses on those young adult people in their 20s instead. Now, I do think that this is an interesting take on coming of age. I'm not sure if the author intended to make this a statement, but I do think that it mirrors the coming of age shift that is happening in our society today. While maturation is still an important part of becoming adults physically, I would say that most people in modern society do not become adults until their 20s. So, what big decisions did our main characters make in their 20s that would be considered as coming into adulthood? Let's review. Number 1, they both left their childhood home to go to school. While going to college isn't everyone's path, it does seem to be more and more necessary to get a degree or obtain a certificate to get a job. Leaving the nest has always been an important first step into adulthood. Part of leaving home is establishing ideas that are separate from your parents. Sophie grows up Jewish, and I don't think she ends the book as a practicing Jew. While both of them still respect their parents and grandparents, they have formed their own moral and ethical code to live by. Both of these characters find a career in game design. Finding a career is an important part of adulthood in modern society. Most adults have at least one career during their lives, and many people nowadays pivot from what they start with as well. We see this with Sophie. She starts as a game designer and then becomes a professor. While I do think she probably would have gone back to game design, she makes a clear pivot. Number 3, finding partnership. I think this novel has a unique perspective on partnership. Usually, partnership means finding a romantic love or a partner that you want to spend the rest of your life with. In this book, the partnership is completely platonic. These two meld their talents together, making amazing games, and they also play together. In an interview, Sam says that playing together connects people more than having sex. Yes, there's a lot to unpack with that thought, but I do think the idea that friendship is just as important as partnership is an interesting one to explore. We are not meant to be in this world alone. The overall structure of this book is chronological. You move between Sophie and Sam's perspective, but except for the flashback of Sam's life with his mother, the structure of this book is easy to follow. I loved how this novel explores characters throughout their lives instead of just them as young adults or just as adults. The growth and change of these characters is fun, but it's also interesting to see how they were both so much the same. Now, normally I start this podcast by analyzing the main conflict of the story, but I had a difficult time deciding what the conflict and the climax of this novel was. I think that's one of the flaws of this book. It tries to take on too many subtopics that interfere with the main conflict. This book covers race, video games, violence, LGBTQ issues, class, and more. I think if we had a few less subtopics, it would have been easier to track down the main plot. However, for me, it's clear that Sam and Sadie's relationship and its cyclical nature throughout the years is the main conflict. So, what is the climax of this book? Usually, we have a build up to a certain point in a novel, but I didn't feel like that was true of this novel. It was just kind of telling a story of their life. My thought is that the climax of this novel is Marx's death. If the central conflict in this story is Sam and Sadie's relationship, then everything comes to a head when the only thing holding the two of them together is no longer there to hold them together. This book is unique because the climax of the novel is about 75% of the way through the book, and there's still about 25% left, which means there's a very long resolution, which is not something that we normally see in a novel. But I loved it. I think the resolution of this book was beautiful. At first, I thought it was Sam's game that he made for Sadie, and then I saw that it was Sadie actually playing the game that Sam made for her. What an interesting way to show grief in a novel. I think that many people complain about video games, but very few people focus on the positives of video games. Video games are a way for people to live out many different lives. That was one of the overarching ideas in this book, and we see this in this chapter. Sadie is able to join the real world again when she had been hiding. I understand that video games are not the real world, but if they help people process things that are going on in their real life, that video game can be a great way for people to heal. This book has some interesting symmetry to it. It's almost as if Sadie and Sam switch places from beginning of the book to the end. At the beginning of the novel, Sam is hospitalized to heal his foot after a car crash. Sadie finds him and they become fast friends. Sadie helps Sam get through the worst part of his life as they play video games together. However, Sam finds out that Sadie has just been his friend to get service hours, and then he refuses to talk to her for years. At the end of this novel, Sam builds a video game for Sadie in order to get her through the worst part of her life and help her come out of her shell. Sam hides his identity from Sadie, though it's clear as day that it's him. Sadie doesn't know. Together they build a new world and find a way to heal. However, when Sadie finds out that Sam has been lying to her, she refuses to talk to him. So the two of them have switched roles. They go from friends to bitter enemies to best friends time and time again throughout the book. I do think the book is interesting that it's cyclical because much of life is cyclical. We find ourselves in the same patterns with new or old people, and getting ourselves out of these cycles is important to our growth. I like to think that Sadie and Sam were able to work together again and to make a game better than any that they have made in the past, and heal this cycle at the end of the book. But we don't get to see that because of how the book ends. I'm not going to lie, the ending of this book really frustrated me. If the central conflict is Sadie and Sam coming together to make and play video games to understand each other, then why did Zevin choose to end the book the way she did? Yes, it's clear that Sam and Sadie are going to play games together again because that's their relationship. But why didn't they end the novel with them building Ichigo 3 together? Was that too unrealistic of an ending or maybe too idealistic? I'm not sure why she ended it the way she did, agreeing to play with each other, but I did like it. I mean, as Sam said earlier, them playing video games together was one of the most important relationships he had, and now they're doing the thing they love together. This book is narrated in third person omniscient, which is my favorite perspective, but not a perspective that I've read in a while. Third person omniscient is when there is a narrator and we can jump into anyone's head. Many books I have read are in third person limited, where you can see through one character's head at a time. In this book, however, sometimes you'd pop into random characters' heads. For example, we see into a nurse's head, or there's also Sam's mom's narrative. I loved this perspective for our character development because Part of understanding character development is understanding how other people see the main character or main characters. The way we get the thoughts and insights from other people outside of our main characters was really interesting and kind of fun. And speaking about characters, let's dive into characterization. Let's start with the person I felt was the main character of this novel, Sam. Yes, Sadie is a main character, but I feel like we got more backstory and insights from Sam. Also, most people who read this book take Sam's side of their argument and feel like Sadie is cold. That being said, Sam then must be the main character. When talking about Sam, I think it's interesting to consider his origins. Sam is from New York. His mother was an actor on stage when she had an affair with Sam's dad. She does tell Sam about his father, but he doesn't really want to be in the picture. And he also doesn't seem to want to be a big part of Sam's life either. Sam's mother's story is tragic. She lives in New York, but doesn't ever get any big roles because of her race. On their way home one day, Sam and his mother Anna are walking home when a woman drops off a building and dies right in front of them. That woman has the same name as Sam's mom, Anna Lee. Sam's mother takes this opportunity to reevaluate her life and move Sam back home to LA. They live there for a short period of time, and then Sam and her are stuck on the side of the road, and someone runs into their car, killing Anna and leaving Sam crippled. I think it's interesting that we get this backstory on Sam. It helps us to understand why he's uncertain about making more connections with people, watching so many of his early connections being taken from him. It rounds his character out and gives him so much depth. Sam is an interesting character. He cares deeply about how people see him and how people view the world. When he finds out that Sadie chose to be his best friend only to get service hours, he's deeply hurt because he cares about her. And he also cares about how she sees him. Only seeing him as a service project was devastating for poor little Sam. We know Sam is very antisocial, yet he is also very charismatic. People love him and his little nerdy face, so we can only assume that he's a good person. I think the reason that people like Sam more than Sadie is people's reactions to him. Marx takes him in like a little brother. People worldwide love him and his persona. For this reason, readers love him as well. Personally, I agree with Sadie's assessment of him, but I also know that her assessment of him wasn't totally fair either. Here's a quote from the novel. Sam used to say that Marx was the most fortunate person he'd ever met. He was lucky with lovers, in business, in looks, in life. But the longer Sadie knew Marx, the more she thought Sam hadn't truly understood the nature of Marx's good fortune. Marx was fortunate because he saw everything as if it were fortuitous bounty. It was impossible to know, were persimmons his favorite fruit? Or had they just now become his favorite fruit because they were there growing in his own backyard? He had certainly never mentioned persimmons before. End quote. Let's not lie. Marx is the only lovable character in this book. Sam and Sadie are both kind of introverted narcissists, so Marx is the only one that holds them all together. He loves Sam like a brother and was always drawn to Sadie as well. He is characterized by Sam as a side character, and yes, he is the side character, so he loves that role. He supports the people in his life and the most kind and loyal character in the book. So if that makes him a side character instead of a main character, then maybe we need more side characters in the world. Now, Zevin did my girl Sadie dirty. In making Sam the main character, she made Sadie into a very flat, selfish character. I don't think this was fair. We get insights into both Sam and Marx's parents, and we only see Sadie's grandma. Although Sadie is one of the two main characters in this novel, she doesn't get much positive attention. She's put up as the pretentious and unfeeling person, and I don't think that's fair to Sadie at all. Yes, Sam went through a number of difficult things, but so did Sadie. She was a sister of a sick girl. She was taken advantage of by someone who she loved and trusted. She loses her spouse, and she's a woman in tech. All of these things make her life difficult and painful. So to say she didn't deserve to walk away from Sam and the company is disingenuous. Sadie lives through difficult things, but at least she lives her life. Sam is either too afraid to let people in, or he doesn't care too much. Sadie is brave. After hardships, she puts herself back out there. She doesn't just hide. Now I know after she loses Marks, she gives up the company, or it seems like she does. But guess what? She had a daughter to take care of, and she just lost her husband. So yeah, I think that her stepping away was probably the best thing she could have done. Don't get me wrong, Sadie wasn't my favorite character either, but for being a main character, she deserved a lot more. Sadie and Sam both love video games, but they couldn't be more different. Where Sam cares about what people think about him, Sadie cares more about her craft. Sadie was trained by Dov Mishra, an Israeli designer. Mishra cared about the art of the game, not just the playability. It's about creating art. As a young, impressionable girl, Sadie soaked in everything Mishra tells her and makes it into her personality. Sadie is very pretentious and artistic. Sam is the man of the people, and he cares more about the story. Sadie wants to be in charge and to be recognized. Sam doesn't want to be in charge, but ends up being the face of the company. Sadie has been like an old woman her whole life, and Sam is like Peter Pan. I could go on all day. Sam and Sadie just fight about everything instead of Sadie explaining how she feels. This makes her a frustrating character because she creates so much conflict, but she can't just get out of her own space and just let people be. My favorite part is when Sadie and Mishra are talking and they are in a cafe, and Mishra tells Sadie that she has to give up on her idea that everyone has to be perfect, that people will always let you down. In order to get along, you must give up your ideal version of people and accept their flaws. This is very true. It also helps Sadie to see that she's been unfair to one of her best friends. Those are the three main characters in this book, but I think my favorite additions to the book are grandparents. Sam and Sadie's grandparents are both wise, and they have two of my favorite quotes in the book. Friendship is friendship, and charity is charity. The people who give you charity are never your friends. It's not possible to receive charity from a friend. And the second quote, there are no ghosts, but up here, she gestured towards her head, it's a haunted house. Let's move to themes. There is so much pain in this book. Every character in this book is in some sort of pain or another. I think it's easiest to start with physical pain. Sam and Sadie meet because of Sam's pain, and also Sadie's sister's pain. Pain is what brings these two together. Physical pain is something that Sam deals with throughout the book. From smashing his foot to having it completely amputated in the middle of this book, Sam deals with physical pain to mental pain. This is an interesting quote that comes from this. Sam's doctor said to him, the good news is the pain is in your head. But I'm in my head, Sam thought. End quote. Sam uses his video games to give voice to his pain. When he creates Mapletown, it was a way for him to deal with his pain and give voice to disabled people. I loved this. Sam created something to deal with his pain, which was a great form of therapy for him. Now, my favorite part of this book is Marx's chapter, which seems a bit morbid, but if you read this chapter, you understand. It was the most beautiful part of the book, and I was moved to tears reading it. The shift from third person to second person was unique. You do not read many things in second person, so it's unique telling to Marx's story, and it was so relatable. I almost wished the whole book was written in this perspective. This chapter is like the highlight reel of Marx's life, which is what people explain dying to be like. I recently read a book that talks about death, where the main character says that people in comas can hear everything that you're saying. And I liked that that idea was reinforced in this book. Marx was aware of what was happening, but he couldn't articulate his feelings. So we get to move through his thoughts. Like time is happening all at once. We get to see what happened to him in his last moments and throughout his life. Just beautiful. Sad, but beautiful. Here's a quote from the end of Marx's chapter. You are flying more slowly than last time because you don't want to miss any of it. The cows, the lavender, the woman humming Beethoven, the distant bees, the sad-faced man, the couple in the pond, the beat of your heart before you go on stage, the feel of lace against your skin, your mother singing Beatles songs to you, trying to sound like she's from Liverpool, the first playthrough of Ichigo, the rooftop on Abbot Kinney, the taste of Sadie's mixed with beer, Sam's round head in your hands, 1,000 paper cranes, yellow tinted sunglasses, a perfect peach. This you think. You are flying over the strawberry field, but you know it's a trap. This time, you keep flying. End quote. The way that Zeman captures life and death in this chapter is truly moving. Pain is something that's all around us, but ultimately it is something you need to move past to live your life again. We see this time and time again throughout the book. There is loss and growth and loss and growth. It's almost like a video game. Race was definitely not the main conflict in this novel, but it was explored differently than I'd seen in many novels. There are many mixed race people, as well as Jewish, Israeli, Japanese, and Korean people. That's a lot of races for one book. However, I don't think that race was meant to be a main topic of the novel. Here's one quote I'd like to talk about. In an interview, Sam is asked about making a video game with Japanese main character. He responds in kind. That's an oversimplification of the issue. The alternative to appropriation is a world where white European people make art about white European people with only white Europe references in it. Swap out African or Asian or Latin or whatever culture you want for European. A world where everyone is blind and deaf to any culture or experience that is not their own. I hate that world, don't you? I'm terrified of what that world might look like. I don't want to live in that world, and as a mixed race person, I literally don't exist in it. My dad, who I barely knew, was Jewish. My mom was an American-born Korean. I was raised by a Korean immigrant parents in Koreatown, Los Angeles. And as a mixed race person, I will tell you, to be half of two things is to be whole of nothing. I'm not sure if I agree with this definition of the word, but I do think this is an interesting quote, especially the ending. What do you think about Sam's definition of cultural appropriation? Why do you think Zeman put it in the novel? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. The main conflict of this novel was Sam and Sadie's partnership. I say partnership because it appears that their relationship was more than just a friendship. In fact, Sadie at the end of this novel says, Sammy, we were together. You must know that. When I'm honest with myself, the most important parts of me were yours. I love Zeman's modern take on relationships. Traditional relationships are always shifting, and this book captures that. However, I feel like the heart of every great relationship, there is a friendship and play. Even though play changes when we are adults, companionship is still an important part of being an adult. Whether that is a romantic relationship or a friendship, part of being human is making lasting connections with those around us. Although neither Sadie or Sam is very good at making friends, they find each other. Thanks to Marks, they learn to become each other's friends. I loved this quote. Friendship, Mark said, is kind of like having a Tamagotchi. In life, Marks kept these two friends together, and then they have to learn to be friends again after his death. There is more than one type of important relationships in this life. Romantic relationships are important, yes, but they are not the only important relationships we have. This is clearly one of the ideas that the novel explores with Sam and Sadie. This book centers around video games, but more than video games, this book centers around stories. The most beautiful part of the games are the worlds that Sadie and Sam build together. They are a way of sharing their worlds with other people. The first game that Sadie and Sam make together is Ichigo. And the making of Ichigo was a culmination of so many cultures. They read the Iliad and included the artwork of the wave. They took ideas from many different places and they made a game that everyone could relate to. There's so much work that goes into making a good game and the world of a good game. I think this is something that non-gamers don't think about. Sam was an expert at weaving stories. He even changes his last name from Mazer with an S to Mazer with a Z. Something that Sadie both loves and hates about him. When he looks at the world, Sam sees it like an epic tale, and he weaves the pieces of his life to fit that narrative. It seems to me that Sam had a case of romance addiction. He was addicted to the story so much that he didn't live much in his own life. When Marks dies, it's the first time Sam really has to come back to Earth and learn how to be an adult. I do love the way that Sam saw the world, though. It's very relatable. As I said earlier, I think the most beautiful part of this book is when Sam makes a world for Sadie so she's able to grieve and find a way to come back together. Though it initially makes Sadie angry, this game was so healing for both Sam and Sadie, and I loved it. The stories we tell help us to cope with the pain that is happening in our lives. We tell ourselves stories and narrate our own stories. Overall, I rated this book 5 out of 5 stars. Although I think this plot was ambitious and how it covers so many ideas, I thought that having video games as a central theme was a great way to tell about modern culture. Video games capture so much of popular culture today, and some may argue that they are at the heart of modern culture, while others say that technology is destroying culture. I loved how this book melds those two ideas together. I also loved this book and its imperfect characters and stunning writing. I hope you enjoyed reading it as much as I did. Thank you for listening to this episode of According to Your English Teacher. If you liked this episode, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I talk about a new book every week, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions about these books as well. If you want to keep up with what I'm currently reading, please follow me on Goodreads or Instagram. My name is Sam Gunther, and my account name is According to Your English Teacher. I'd love to leave you one last quote. Every time I run into you for the rest of our lives, I'll ask you to make a game with me. There's a groove in my brain that insists it's a good idea. Isn't that the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results? That's a game character's life too, Sam said. The world of infinite restarts. Start again at the beginning. This time you might win. And it's not as if all our results were bad. I love the things we made. We are a great team. Sam offers Sadie his hand, and she shook it. She pulled him into her and kissed Sam on the cheek. I love you, Sadie, Sam said. I know, Sam. I love you too. This episode of According to Your English Teacher was written by me, Sam Gunther, and edited by Dallin Gunther. The music was composed by Tom Brinton. Please join us next week as we unpacked the book, The Collective Regrets of Clover.